Hey guys, so I just wanted to make a video response to Thunderfoot's video, hashtag like a girl. He's basically attacking these viral videos made by corporations like Dove and Pantene in which they promote messages that are supposed to empower women. And he's basically making the point that these companies are using a message that we can all agree with, like say photoshopping isn't is it normal or is it natural, whatever it is, and then it's an argument you can agree with, and then they're selling you a product. But then the problem with Thunderfoot, and I have a problem with a lot of his videos because he does this, is he's using our negative impression of these companies trying to manipulate us in order to manipulate us against the message that they're promoting. So of course, who makes the message doesn't matter. It could be a corporation, it could be like a freaking saint, it doesn't matter. The message stands and falls on its own merit, right? So if the message uh, is done by a good guy or bad guy, it doesn't matter. You have to either defend the message or you have to attack the message. But you can see throughout most of the video, he's attacking the messenger, and then he later transitions to attacking the message. Now, this can be taken in two different ways. Either he's sort of incoherent and rambling. He has like multiple arguments that he's making. It's not really clear what he's arguing about in particular, or he's trying to manipulate us and trying to get us to agree with him that those companies are bad and trying to manipulate people. And then once he gets us to dislike those companies, he can then attack the message that they're trying to send, right? So I think if he's doing the latter, he's basically doing what he's accusing these companies of doing. You know, he's basically doing the same exact thing, and he's a hypocrite in that way. I'm not sure if that's what his goal was, but anyway, that's what you see. At the worst case, the best case, I mean, it's basically a rambling, incoherent argument. I don't know what his thesis is. You know, if you want to argue that companies are bad for manipulating, say that outright, and then make your argument. If you have a problem with the message that they're promoting, say that outright in the beginning, and then argue against the message, debate the message, provide the evidence for the message, and I would be more than willing to listen. But the way he argues here, it's, first of all, totally condescending. And second of all, it's, which again, is something that he accuses feminists of all the time, being condescending. He does it. And basically, it's not an honest argument. It's not the correct way to make these arguments. It's an ad hominem attack, basically. So I'm going to play the video along and comment just to show you how actually incoherent, rambling, and how totally incorrect his argumentative style is.
First, we had that fantastic Dove commercial. Then we had Ban Bossy.
This is Ban Bossy, take one. Push it.
And now following closely in its footsteps, we have Like a Girl. The formula is pretty generic. You want to give it this behind-the-scenes feel to make it seem less staged and more authentic. You know, trustworthy. I don't know, maybe get a clackerboard in there or something.
So right now, it doesn't seem like he's arguing against feminism or making any particular argument against anything except the corporations themselves, and that they're trying to manipulate us into making it seem like it's an argument, it's an authentic video that they're making, when in fact, obviously, they're manipulating the viewer into thinking it's authentic when it's not, right? So that's a fine argument to make. But later, he goes on to say that feminists are embracing victimhood, right? That's later in this video. Right? So for him to get from point A, which is what he's talking about right now, to point B is a huge leap. And I want this to be clear in everyone's mind. He's going to transition from what he's talking about now, and just keep this in your mind, that he's talking about corporations right now, and he's later going to transition into attacking the actual message and attacking feminists and attacking their sense of victimhood. Right? So all of this has nothing to do with feminism. Right? This is how corporations make their videos. This is how they have bottom line, they're trying to sell a product. What does it have to do with feminism? You know, are feminists endorsing these products? You know, if they are, you can provide the evidence. You know, I'd like to see the evidence of feminists going out there, feminist groups at least, well-known or well-respected feminist groups going out there and saying, "Hey, we endorse Dove shampoo or whatever," then they're part of that system of manipulation, right? But for you to transition from attacking what the corporation's bottom line is to attacking the message itself is totally wrong, right? You're attacking the message uh, regard by attacking the messenger, and you're totally ignoring the message.
I'll have the girl sitting down while someone says that you're recording audio. Despite the fact that that's the only audio used in the entire video, which...
So that's not true, right? He's saying that's the only audio used in the entire video. If you actually listen to the video, you'll see that there's there's the sounds of people talking in the background, there's the sounds of the cameras going off, the clicks of the cameras going off. So he's just totally factually incorrect here. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because it shows this kind of incoherence in his argument, right? Who cares what the director said about the sound or whatever? What does it have to do with the overall argument? It's basically him sort of nitpicking in a way to show that these guys are manipulative, right? But if you're going to do that, at least do it accurately. And if you're going to do that, don't then transition into the message, right? None of this that he's talking about right now has anything to do with the overarching message, right? Of empowerment of women.
By the way, it cost about $130,000 to make, and then take a point that everyone...
Again, this has nothing to do with the overarching argument. And I can talk for 20 minutes about how you're wrong about how there's no audio being used when there's clearly audio that was used in that video, right? But who cares, right? Get to the point.
One can agree with, like say for instance that women on magazine covers are photoshopped. And then just hope no one spots that the title is product placement.
So this is actually an argument that feminists are making against these sort of viral ads. That these companies are sort of co-opting the feminist message, doing product placement with a message that everyone can agree with. Like how Photoshop happens and how it's not good or whatever. But the thing is, he's doing the same exact thing, right? He's getting you to dislike the companies for trying to manipulate you, and he's manipulating you into disliking feminism, even though this has nothing to do with feminism.
I mean, I just kind of scratch my head at this one. Are these people really getting upset about people using Photoshop to make themselves seem more beautiful than they actually are, when the very product that they are trying to sell you is meant to make you appear more beautiful than you actually are?
This is an argument that feminists make. Some feminists.
Appearance-enhancing cosmetics. I mean, to be honest, if you don't find this being transformed into this a problem, then why do you really care about the photoshopping? And that, of course, is just ignoring the fact that the whole thing was just a Unilever marketing campaign timed to coincide with the expansion of Dove brand artificial appearance-enhancing cosmetic soaps and cleansers. No, nothing to do with that at all. It was just about how much Dove brand cosmetics agrees with you about just how wrong it is for other women to try to be more beautiful than they actually are.
Again, a feminist argument. All of what he said. And again, notice none of this has anything to do with the message that he's going to argue about later.
Of course not, America. The freedom to exploit your patriotism to sell you beer is exactly the kind of freedom your founding fathers fought for. And by selling you beer, we're just protecting your freedom to buy more of our beer.
Now we have another corporation with an entirely philanthropically motivated message.
Again, he's continuing to attack corporations.
This time, they want young, confused girls, about the time that they get their first period, to know that a sanitary towel manufacturer knows and understands their problems. And it's got nothing to do with all that hormonal shit that kicks off in a woman's body about this time. Now, it's all down to people saying, throw like a girl.
Why can't it be about both? It's all about people saying throw like girls and not at all about, the hormonal stuff that happens. Like, that's kind of a straw man, dude. You gotta understand that this is a somewhat complex situation that, young women go through, and it's a lot of different things, right?
So when they're in that vulnerable time between 10 and 12, how do you think it affects them when somebody uses like a girl as an insult?
I think it definitely drops their self-confidence and really puts them down, because during that time, they're already trying to figure themselves out.
Oh, isn't that nice of them to know that a corporation like this has your best interest at heart?
Now, I'd like to point something out here. This is why I'm playing the video as I go. This woman, young girl about to become a woman, said something about what her feelings are in this particular situation, what it's like to grow up in this particular situation, hearing these words, right? He completely ignored the substance of what she said. And he continues to attack the corporation that said it, right? And that's okay if your argument is about the corporation, but later he argues against this message itself. So keep those words in mind of what that girl said. He's going to attack that, right? Not right now, later when it's not in your memory as much, okay?
In that sense, it's a perfect viral advertising campaign for something that is intrinsically difficult to market.
He's completely ignoring the message and attacking the viralness or the marketingness of the company's efforts, right?
Sorry to be the one to tell you this.
I'm gonna
There's
fast
no
forward
such
through
thing
this.
as a happy period. And yes, Richard, the blood coursing from our uteri like a crimson landslide.
They get what they want, which is for teenage girls to have a positive association with always sanitary towels. That is, as long as they don't think about it too much. But
Anyway, that's, again, the argument that some feminists have made against these sort of viral ads.
we'll come back to that in a second. I mean, if you want to see how eye-rollingly badly this game can be played, just watch the Pantene commercial. No clackboard. Amateurs.
Sorry, can
They're not amateurs, right? That's a point.
I ask a stupid question?
Sorry, do you have a minute?
Sorry.
Where it insists that women keep apologizing like this isn't something that everyone does just to be polite. Nah, it's only women who ever do this. Then, of course, what if women didn't say sorry?
I have a question. Why don't we go back to the original thing that we did?
Morning. Got a minute?
Yes, Pantene wants you to be one of those people who never says sorry.
That's not what they said. They said don't apologize, not never apologize. And there's a difference, right? I think the message, underlying message that they were trying to send, which I think they did a poor job on, is that women should stand up for themselves a little bit more than they do. That's their opinion, that maybe that women don't stand up enough for themselves. And that's a fine argument. It's not one that I necessarily agree with, but no one ever said that they should never apologize. And they never said be disrespectful, right? Because those women were clearly still respectful, but while being assertive.
Because if we wanted to be constantly misunderstood, we'd try and talk to a deaf person.
Hey, Taylor, I think you might actually be a bitch.
Ironically, he's purposely misunderstanding what these people are saying. It's fairly obvious to me what they're trying to say, but he's interpreting it in a way that's really, really, it's just a straw man, right? They never want to do this. They always want to do this. Always a problem. That's how he's talking, right? No one's saying that. Calm down. If I purposely want to be misunderstood, I'll talk to a deaf person, right? That's the response that one would have to this guy.
In real life.
Yeah, that was...
You should have all been aborted.
Whoa.
Oh yeah, everyone loves someone who never says sorry. Ain't that so late?
That's not what they said at all.
We hope you can accept our non-apology. Because remember, it takes a big person to face your opponents and apologize. But it takes an even bigger person to face them and not apologize.
If you think about it, what she says has nothing to do with anything, right? They weren't arguing that you should never apologize, so talking about this, putting this video in is completely pointless.
I'm not touching the product. It's in my contract.
Okay.
Joking aside, and coming back to the thinking about the Throw Like a Girl commercial, as much admiration as I have for how well executed this marketing campaign was, it's still bullshit.
Okay, so now we're getting to the message itself. This entire time he's been arguing against a marketing campaign, he's been arguing against a company. Now we're finally talking about the substance of what those people made, right? And now he's going to argue that. And that's why I think this is possibly dishonest, right? If he had a problem with the message, he would just start this 6 minutes ago, right? He wouldn't have had to sit through all of this.
And maybe this would be a good time for those Me Too.
Okay, I'm just gonna pause for a second to read this image that he has on his screen, which he doesn't even refer to, but it's basically a young woman holding up a placard saying, "I need feminism because I let my father convince me that majoring in women's studies was a poor academic choice," and in parentheses, it's quoting her father. "It won't be respected." And next to it is a Photoshop version of it, saying, "I need feminism because my father said I shouldn't spend 40K to major in women's studies. Instead, learn something more about the world in general rather than one tiny speck of it, and gain skills that will actually prove useful in life and find me employment, as opposed to overanalyzing everything to the point that people avoid me." So he posted this. He doesn't defend it. He doesn't attack that placard, but it seems to be fairly obvious that he agrees with it. But I find this really interesting. So if you're studying women's studies, that means you overanalyze everything to the point that people avoid you. That's what the person's problem with women's studies is, right? But does that make sense to anyone? Like, you overanalyze everything if you're in women's studies, and to the point that people avoid people who study women's studies. Like, it's just despicable. That's just a despicable comment right there. But you can also talk about, let's say it's a good argument to say that you're purely in an academic setting when you're studying women's studies, and it's not really a practical skill that will prove useful in life, right, as the placard says. Well, that could be said about an English major or a person who studies African American studies, right? Like, those are not particular skills that will actually prove useful in life because they're in an academic setting, just like this woman's, right? If you have a women's studies major, you could be a professor. You could later apply to study women's, and have women's history and have a class about it in an academic setting, just like you would if you were an African American studies, just like you would if you're an English major, So that particular argument isn't specific to women's studies, yet they choose just women's studies to make that argument, and that's totally unfair in my opinion.
Tumblr type feminists to get a box of Kleenex in, because if you think
Tumblr type feminists meet YouTube type anti-feminists.
The expression "like a girl" is what destroys the self-confidence of young women, then a hard stare at...
No one says that the phrase "like a girl" is what destroys a woman's self-esteem, right? Not just that phrase, right? It's obviously that there are a lot of other factors that are involved, societal factors and societal pressures that women had to face. And ironically, this is what you learn in women's studies, right? You learn about these underlying social factors and how they manifest in people who say, you play like a girl or you throw like a girl or things like that. It's not a term used in isolation. There's societal influence behind that term, that demeans women or that underappreciates women. Right? So ironically, you more than anyone else, Thunderfoot, need to take women's studies so you can understand the nuances of why those kind of phrases are hurt women's rights.
Reality will likely cause a gendered panic attack of apocalyptic proportions.
Okay, I'm going to pause here for another screen in which there's a young woman showing a placard saying, "I need feminism because it's 2012 and only 3% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women." And in the bottom, Thunderfoot wrote, "Yes, and women are 0% of the 100 fastest 100-meter runners." Now here's the thing, like, I'm a guy of science, right? If there's evidence pointing to it, I'm going to accept it, right? If the majority or overwhelming majority of scientific societies and universities accept a certain fact, I'm going to lean towards that, even though I haven't really studied it in particular detail, because I'm going to trust their judgment, right? I'm going to do this in terms of evolution, I'm going to do this in terms of racism, I'm going to do this in terms of global warming, and I'm going to do this in terms of women's rights. Now, yes, women are 0% of the 100 fastest 100-meter runners, right? That's a physical criteria, which I'm pretty sure, which medical community agrees with, right? There are physical differences in strength between men and women. But there's no such criteria for the brain. In other words, there's no innate reason that women should be 3% of the CEOs. There's no evidence indicating that women are not as smart as men or they're not as naturally ambitious as men. I mean, if there is, you can show us. I know for a fact, according to a Stanford study, that women actually outperform boys. Girls outperform boys in most subjects in high school, and even in college they do better. And yet they're not a good number of the CEOs. Why is that? So you're not actually addressing her argument, right? She's talking about one thing. You're like, aha, you're wrong because, and then you give evidence for something completely different. So this is a problem for you. You're not providing any evidence for your arguments.
I know, it's hardly rocket science. Add in there a spot of culture. Girls having less historical need to throw stuff than guys. And the fact that sports mostly focus on higher, faster, and stronger, which on a level playing field, with no sexism whatsoever, is actually men in every category.
Okay, so to separate again the mental faculties of women with the physical capabilities, there's no evidence that they're worse off in the former, and there's tons of evidence that they're, when the playing field is equal, that they're worse off in the latter, right?
Otherwise,
The belief that women are somehow a naturally weaker gender is a deeply ingrained socially constructed myth, which of course is completely false.
oh, I know, let me taste those sweet and juicy social justice warrior tears.
No, but that's the thing. Is like she's making a claim without evidence, which she's wrong about because there's no scientific evidence for it. But you're doing the same exact thing in terms of mental faculties. So there's no difference between you and her.
Let me just say that again. On a level playing field, with no glass ceiling, and absolutely no sexual discrimination, men are faster, stronger, and better throwers. Yet that's not sexism you're looking at. That's just the reality of being a sexually dimorphic species. So in demographic terms, little girls tend to be the weakest throwers of all. So guess what this is simile, or metaphor, or whatever, for someone who throws weakly is? Wow, I know, rocket science. But no, the fact that little girls are the weakest throwers is clearly wrong, because little staged girls in Barbie pink and rainbow girl hair can throw stuff too.
So that's not what the video is about. If you watch the video, it's not. They're not saying that girls throwing worse than men is wrong, right? That's not what they're saying. What they're showing is that a woman who's not exposed to the sort of societal expectations, a young girl, tries her best when she's asked to do something like a girl. Run like a girl, she'll run as fast as she can in place, and she's trying her best. And as a girl grows older, is in the middle school stage, and they're told to run like a girl, they sort of run like a sissy. That's what they're told is running like a girl, right? They're not trying their best. So that's the message that they're sending. They're not talking about Olympic athletes. They're not talking about level playing field and how women are equally as strong as men. What they're saying is that there's a societal expectation for young women that develops, because clearly they didn't have it when they were much younger, which tells them that they shouldn't work up to their potential. Right? They shouldn't try their best when they're doing something, even if they're not actually as strong as an Olympic athlete. Like nobody's arguing that, right? So he totally took the wrong message and he's attacking a straw man, right? That video has nothing to do with how men and women are equally strong in a level playing field. They never made that argument. All they're talking about is the effort that a young woman puts in as she grows up in this society, which has certain expectations of her. So basically, after 6 minutes of not addressing the message of these commercials and just attacking the corporations, he finally starts to do what he thinks is addressing the message, but he's not, because he's just addressing a straw man. He's not talking about what the message actually is. So basically, we have an entire video where I literally have no idea who you're addressing, what argument you're arguing against. I really have no idea who you're arguing against, except the corporations and that crazy woman who thinks that women are as strong as men. That's it. You're not addressing anything else. It has nothing to do with the hashtag, nothing to do with the title of your video. It's just utter incoherent rambling.
uplifting music which includes important demographics, including sporty and token. And as with all advertising campaigns, absolutely no fatties and no uglies, because all
So again, he's bringing back the corporation into this, right? Or the corporate, no fatties, no uglies, or whatever. That's not anything to do with the message. You know, again, you're not addressing the message.
you're courageously battling for the self-esteem of young girls. The last thing that you want is your product associated with fat or ugly people. And the fact that you can confuse a teenaged girl or actor or whatever into not understanding the difference between the meaning of a girl throwing and the simile of throw like a girl.
Yes, I kick like a girl, and I swim like a girl, and I walk like a girl, and I wake up in the morning like a girl because I am a girl. And that's not something that I should be ashamed of.
I know.
No, she's not confusing the act of acting like a girl and the simile, right? What she's doing is she's owning the message, right? It's intended as a demeaning insult, right? When someone says you throw like a girl, but she's owning it and she's saying I'm doing everything that way, and she's trying her best to do everything. You know, she's swimming like a girl. She does everything like a girl, right? And she's trying her best, so there's nothing demeaning about it. This is what is actually an intelligent thing which she just did here. So I feel like you misunderstood what she's trying to say, not the other way around.
No poor girl must go white with fear when someone says she's in the shit, or someone eats like a pig, or I would kill for a royale with cheese.
You know, like, to compare that to something that's part of a person's identity, you know, like a girl, you know, that's being a girl is part of her identity, you know, it's used to demean, right, in this particular context, right? To compare that to any simile, like, you're failing here. You know, this is your fail, not her fail.
But anyway, now, girls' plummeting self-confidence is all down to the devastating metaphor of throw like a little girl. This is why girls' self-confidence plummets during puberty.
Okay, so again, he's misstating the argument. He's saying that these people are arguing that, so it's a straw man. This is what his interpretation of the argument is that their self-esteem going down during puberty has all to do with being told they do something like a girl, right? And that's just not true, right? If you actually took women's studies, they don't spend, you know, months talking about the phrase like a girl, right? So for you to talk like that, it's just despicable, man. But like, also consider as an example, an alternative, a parallel sort of situation with the LGBT community, right? So LGBT youth have 4 times the likelihood of suicide as straight youth of the same age. Now they're also called things. You know, they're called names, right? On a day-to-day basis. You know, or like they could call a straight person like a fag, or they could say to a straight person, "You talk like you're gay," you know, like if in a feminine voice or with a lisp or whatever. You know, you can make all these similar arguments, you know, parallel arguments with gays, but nobody in their right mind would say that's the reason for their suicide, right? In fact, those phrases have a deeper underlying reason, right? Which are also the reason for the suicide, right? They both share a common underlying bigoted hatred against gays, right? That's why people say you're a fag, or they say you're you talk like a fag, you know, and that hatred is also the reason that they commit higher suicide, that they commit suicide at higher rates. But those phrases in isolation obviously don't cause the suicide, right? This is obvious for anyone.
Wow, that and of course being called bossy.
When I was growing up, I was called bossy.
I think the word bossy is just a swasher.
Being labeled something matters.
By middle school,
Girls are less interested in leadership than boys. And that's because they worry about being called bossy.
And as many feminists has pointed out, when women have such heavy crosses to bear, and the fact that they think that women are such weak and fragile creatures that they really need to have their hands held to deal with these horrific social burdens, it must truly amaze feminists that any women make it to adulthood at all.
So let's talk about what he's doing right now, right? He's mocking feminists. But is he mocking feminists? because he's not addressing the subject of the video, right? What is the video talking about, right? That we just heard. It's talking about young girls who are becoming women in middle school age, right? Who don't yet have that self-esteem of an adult, who haven't figured themselves out yet, as the young girl before said. And they face these pressures and they don't go into leadership roles because they don't want to be called bossy. That's not feminists who are doing this. It's young girls, young women who are doing this. So if you're mocking that burden that these young women have, right, in middle school, right, that's pretty disgusting, man. Like, you're not attacking feminists here. Let's be clear. You're not attacking feminists with this phrase. You're attacking those young women, right? Because that's what that video was about. So this is what you do all the time, is you're changing up the argument. That video wasn't about feminists. It was about young women in middle school age, okay? And you're insulting them. Now, let's go back to just something that he didn't address. Remember about the young girl, about what it's like to hear that phrase. What it's like to do something like a girl.
Somebody
I just want to
uses
remind
like
you.
a girl as an insult.
I think it definitely drops their self-confidence and really puts them down, because during that time they're already trying to figure themselves out.
Oh, isn't that nice of them?
So look at
to know
this. So that's what that young woman believes, right? That's what it feels to her. She's sharing her opinion of what it's like to grow up at that age with that societal pressure, right? And he's insulting that perspective. Is that wrong to anyone else but me? That just doesn't sound right. He's not attacking feminism. He's attacking that girl for feeling that way, right?
Truly amaze feminists that any women make it to adulthood at all the while having that perplexed look on their face as to why the term feminism has inexplicably acquired the reputation of being a cult where the only tenet is that you whinily embrace victimhood. Good.
No, there's a few things here. First of all, he's mocking feminists. Most of them are women, right? And he's mocking the idea that they don't understand why everyone has they have a bad reputation. And I think it's pretty clear. It's people like you, Thunderfoot, that they have a bad reputation. You keep attacking them without any evidence, with really bad arguments, and they get pissed off. And once they get pissed off, you're recording. You're like, oh, see, she's being a bitch. So. Like, what do you want him to do, man? You're not making honest arguments right now. This is not the proper way to argue. You're debating like a creationist, basically. And to say it's just really interesting to me that you're saying that they're embracing victimhood, right? So that's interesting, because let's say a person who's an actual victim embraces victimhood. There's nothing wrong with that, right? It's an appropriate thing to do for a victim, is to embrace what you are, right? It's only inappropriate if you're not a victim, right? If you're not a victim and you embrace victimhood, then it's inappropriate, right? So he's basically implying that women are not victims of anything. Now, that's a fine argument to make, but you need to make that argument. You didn't actually say anywhere why these women are wrong, why these societal pressures don't exist. You never say it outright. You're just sort of implying it. You're attacking their argument without defending your own, without making an argument of your own. You're just sort of, and that's dishonest in my opinion, right? If you don't like the message, and if you think that message is wrong, provide the evidence for why that societal pressure doesn't exist, and then we can talk about it. We can discuss using the evidence, the scientific evidence, where they control for SES, they control for health factors, they control for all these things, and you can compare. And here's the thing, like, if they're not victims, are African Americans victims? They're fighting for similar things, right? Like, if you take African American studies, if you take women's studies, like, what do they talk about? They talk about this historical, societal expectations that is still lingering, right? So these African Americans are fighting for the same sort of things. They don't achieve as much as whites do in academics or in terms of health, right? They have worse health outcomes than whites, right? They have a lower education outcomes, lower pay than whites, right? So if these guys, if women are are embracing victimhood? Are African Americans embracing victimhood? Because they're arguing about the same thing, essentially, right? It's just different things. They both face societal pressures, you know. So you can argue that, you know, that even African Americans are not victims. You know, you can argue that women are not victims and that what happened in the past is in the past, and that would apply to African Americans as well. You can argue about these things, but you're not, right? You're not actually making a positive argument. And that's where you fail, in my opinion. Everything you do is just like a sneering insult towards women. You say feminist over and over and over, but that's like when, in my opinion, when a conservative says urban when they mean black, right? When they say Muslim when they mean black in terms of in regards to the president, you know. So that's what I think. This is my personal opinion. I don't know if it's true, but if you're gonna make an argument, you better be ready with an actual argument and not just insults, or you're no better than these guys. You know, you're no better than these creationists or conservatives that make empty, you know, vitriolic arguments which have no basis in any evidence whatsoever.
Job feminists. That's exactly the role model that young women need. But as for the viral marketing campaign, yeah,
Alright, I'm going to end this right here because he's basically repeating what he's saying. Alright guys, take care.